Hey there guys, so this is probably going to be a witchy check-in. I am kind of finding that now that I'm starting to talk to you guys, my voice is different somehow. I may have a hard time talking, so I don't know how long, blah and blah, all the caveats. It's been quite a hell of a weekend really. So a check-in. There may not be any cards, really, because I will talk maybe about cards as it comes up, because I did pull a few cards at some point, but it's not really like it's been this major card game, going on. There have been other things. And a lot of it has to deal with living with vulnerability, which, I kid you not, is difficult or complicated. And I suppose as I sit here and I do this, it will it will open up again, because that's what it tends to do. I did my journaling. There's the sun, then you get this black and white effect again. It's really quiet out here at the moment. There's a bit of sun. It's a fairly bright day. And there's birds in the garden. They're at the bird feeding station again that I refilled just now, so that's always nice to see. Little birds, all sorts of kinds of birds coming to feed one after the other. So yeah, we had a really good weekend, I think. We went to the movies. We saw Frozen 2. So that's an absolute success. I loved it. I loved every second of it. And so did my husband. There's this really weird shadow going like that. I'm just trying to, maybe if I sit here, this is more or less normal to look at, don't you think? Okay, so wonderful movies, followed by pizza in an Italian restaurant actually in town, and all that was great fun. It was a bit tiring. And I may also have overdone it slightly on the Shakti Pads episode, so let me go into that first, because there's several things, okay? It turns out that doing the Shakti Pads is quite, takes a toll, in a way. This is a negative expression. I don't mean it that way. What I mean is it costs me, and I haven't really figured out how to completely compensate for that yet. So what it feels like, or what the experience is like doing a Shaktipat, is it's completely different from any Shakti energy inside me that I'm used to, the way that I'm used to doing those things. It is like it does itself, basically. And I suppose that is just a natural progression from doing Shakti energy work or Kundalini meditation in any way, is that at some level, if you work at it, you will develop, or your Shakti nature will develop a tendency to do this, or it will start talking to Shakti out there in the world, which is great. It feels really good. It's also that I have done this attempt where I have put up 5 different types of Shaktipat, in the sense that I tried to combine the focus exercise for me with a particular intention, basically. I used music for that, and those that are, I made a playlist where those 5 are at, and I have actually got 3 more that I recorded yesterday late in the afternoon. Because I feel by now I feel that's it, more or less, for the moment. I am done with the with this particular way of approaching of this. I may have overdone it slightly, as you tend to hear me say. It's just that it involves an immense focus projected outward. So I can really feel that. And afterwards, there's another quite essential bit that I sort of rediscovered again. I have talked on my channel. I will try to find it again. It's quite a while ago. I've done an episode where it's about sort of reclaiming your energy from activities and or people where you've had an intense interaction with something or somebody, and you put a rose at the edge of your aura and you reclaim your energy. That's an important part of my meditation practice. I think still I don't use it very often. I just in this thing with the Shakti Pads, I have had to use it twice, and I've noticed the effect of that exercise immediately again. So it's, in a nutshell, it is that you meditate and you stand a rose, a living rose, in your visualization, okay, at the edge of your aura, and any energy that's in between you and the rose that doesn't belong to you, you send outwards again back to where it came from, on the one hand. And on the other hand, any energy of yourself that belongs with you, that is out there beyond the rose, you ask it to move from wherever it is to a point over your head, which is called the personal sun. It's a wonderful exercise. It works really well for any kind of activity, really. It sort of neutralizes the energies, pure plural, yes, I think, from the activities that you've been engaged in. So all this focus that you've been sort of, streaming out into this subject or into this interaction or whatever it was, it is neutralized in the solar energy that is over your head. It's like a solar chakra, type of a soul chakra-ish type of a field. So that works really well. The funny thing was that I could normally, whenever you do this or whenever I do this, when I can feel it recharging me, it's like it's recharging my batteries immediately. It's kind of quick. I've quite some practice at this type of thing, so I know how to do it, and it just feels really good. And I feel energized, and I feel better. I feel like it's something comes back to me actually that needs to be with me. In this particular case, the 2 times that I have done this, after I had done such an intensive series of Shaktipat meditations, or transmissions, I should say, when the energy came into my aura again after having been processed through my sun field up there, I could still feel there was a Shakti nature to the energy as it came into. So that's kind of really unusual, kind of cool. It felt positive. It's still a very positive kind of a vibration. So I'm cool with it. Only I was like, whatever, weird. This is different. It's very different from what I'm used to. So I like an extra side activity that I have to pay attention to every time I do this. I will I will upload my 3 new Shaktipat sessions during the coming couple of weeks, probably just one a week or so, because I'm not in any hurry now. I felt that it was important to upload at least one of them before the solstice. For some reason, it felt like it was a big deal. I don't know what I'm doing sometimes, but it felt like that I had to upload the things before actually the solstice was here where I am. And because we were awake sort of at 5 o'clock in the morning on Sunday early morning, just before the solstice, I ended up because my husband was awake as well. I wanted him to see my Shakti Pads before I uploaded them, and we did that then. So there was already that. And so I uploaded another set of them very early in the morning, just before the solstice. And I finished with the fifth one in I think it was during the afternoon or so, in on Sunday, so yesterday. And all that is done, really. So they're out there. It feels kind of really good to have done this. I suppose that I've invested an enormous amount of my personal oomph into this thing. So I'm kind of already, I was already kind of, and I'm also, what it does, it tends to make me spacey. So my brain goes like way out there. It's like a way. I can't really focus on myself anymore. I sort of lose my connection to myself in the course of this kind of a thing. So that's something that tends to happen. And I am not completely sure how effective I was with my recalling of my focus from the Shaktipat, whatever it was, out there, to the sun. I could feel that I was being recharged, but it still may need a couple more days for me to just completely be here again. That's quite possible. So how does it feel? How does it really feel? It feels like I move myself completely outside of the personal dimension that I'm in, if that makes any sense. And I connect with a particular kind of energy. The Shakti that I connect with is a Shakti of the world, as it were. So it's kind of impersonal, and you need, in order for this kind of thing to happen, you need to have quite a bit of Shakti inside your belly, inside yourself, to counterbalance this, I think. So I've been doing a bit of my own Shakti work on the inside also, and that makes me feel quite a bit better. The reason why I am not I'm sitting here and sort of kind of moaning at you, even though, I'm having tea and I've had a bit of coffee and I'm okay otherwise, I'm just really tired now. The reason for that isn't the Shakti Pads or the movie or going to town or any of the other things, is that I kind of performed like a vibrational surgery on my husband yesterday. His second chakra hasn't functioned properly for a number of years now, with some consequences to our married life, if you know what I mean. He's turning 60 this year, 2020. So some of that is, like you questions about what a man's life is going to be at that age. He looks still very young. You may have seen him traipsing around my videos a few times. He's quite he's got quite a lot of energy for his work, and still I can tell also that sometimes the things are getting to him and starting to get to him slightly, so it's not always easy. And other things and lots of reasons really why I finally sort of decided, okay, so this time I'm going to have a really proper look at your second chakra, at your underbelly, see what's going on there. And this is where it gets really interesting. This might be another at least 15 minutes tale that I'll have to tell you, because it has to do, I think it has to do everything with men and women and things there that I haven't really ever talked about. I tend to see myself as a kind of a feminist, because sovereignty, personal sovereignty for everybody, that's my thing, really. So whenever that's challenged, or whenever there isn't any sovereignty for people, I hate that. I want to have people free to make their own choices and free to live their lives in bodies that are safe and things like that most of the time. So that's it really. I'm not into politics that much, and okay, so there's more that can be said. However, in this particular case, things came to light as a result of my focusing on my dear beloved husband of 30, almost 33 years now. That I want to share with the world. And I'm trying to think, it's a bit of a complex situation. I'm trying to think from where I should start, really. I think where I should start describing what it was like is that he's got vanished twin syndrome, which is called, it's one name, one way of putting it. He's a womb twin survivor. I've done several videos on that already, so you can look that up. I think there's a few videos in the soul loss playlist on my channel as well, if you want to look at that type of thing. It means, basically what it means is that there's a person walking around now, okay, who has certain psychological traits. A great sadness is among those traits, and a lot of their life is basically either trying to run away from the sadness or trying to deal with it in some way or other. It's become more and more well known, really. So if you look it up, if it's something that sort of, interests you for yourself or for somebody else, please look it up. The lost twin or the womb twin survivor themes are all over. They're all over Google. It's a very important part of human existence, I think. At this time, certainly, it is something that we start to learn about more and more. So my episode now also is going to be about this, because for the first time, I could sort of have a conversation with his second chakra, his underbelly chakra, really, where for a woman, it's where your female organs are, okay? So there was this, his whole second chakra had sort of crystallized into a crystal of sadness and pain and loss and fear in a way also. It generated fear for himself in his body, and it was something that he was not keen to look at, or even unable to really look at or to experience the level of sadness that was there. And because I was sitting really close to him and I was sort of engaging in this emotion, picking up with my hands whatever I could from those emotions, I was reminded of the twin situation, of course. There is this deep sense of loss in this actual second chakra here. So what's going on here? I'm looking at this. There's this emotion. And all of a sudden, what sort of became clear was that not only was there his own loss of his little brother in there, it was really 100% like he had incorporated vibrationally. So on the level of the chakras, right? What it was like for his mother to go through this. And my own female organs were telling me, okay, this is hard. Okay, this is really hard. Where you have one child, you have to choose, or the body chooses which child will apparently not make it. Okay, there's 2 children in there instead of 1, maybe even more than 2. In this case, I think there were 2. One of them isn't making it. And their mother, in this case, was a really frail, small, little woman with a personal life with some kind of disease or lack of strength in many respects, lots of pain. For her, bearing children was no joke, okay? To start with, this is not a healthy blossoming. I mean, I think of myself always that I'm 53, I might still get pregnant and have a healthy child now. Because of my metabolism down there. You know, my things are still in working order. I'm fit and I'm really strong, and I've got really strong, you know, my carcass. It's not going to be necessarily easy, but I'm fairly confident that if I'm had the idiotic idea to get pregnant, sorry for that word, but that's how I look at it now, it would still work. The apparatus would still do the thing. However, for my mum-in-law, it wasn't really like that. And I suppose it would have been really nigh on impossible for her to carry and give birth to twins. You know, incredible. And so there's this whole thing. Then what happens for the woman, for the mother, from the viewpoint of the uterus, okay, so if you're grossed out, please stick around because it's probably going to be useful for you. And good luck, you know, with whatever it is you're engaged in. Otherwise, don't, you know. Because one of those kids, one of those, even in a stage of tiny little, you know, embryos, basically, one of them has to go out because it has to be released, it has to go. The other one has to stay. So very conflicting, right? Completely schizoid, almost, conflicting messages going on in the underbelly. One of them has to go, the other one has to stay. So apparently the woman's body can do this. And I have never had children myself. I've only had periods since I was 12. So that's 40 years and a bit that I've had periods. More or less on clock time, every month, every 4 weeks, every lunar phase, you know, every lunar cycle, it's there you go again. And I realized that actually the experience of menstruation helps me to understand how this is a woman's work. This is the goddess work, basically, the earth goddess work, if you like, where life is released, life ends, and what is left of the life is released and let go back into the great natural cycle. But life is also preserved at the same time. Life equals death equals life, in a way. So I was going into all this myself with my hands on my husband's belly, communicating with this chakra, with this energy field at the bottom of his, where he's emotionally, it's really hard for him to deal with this because he doesn't have these organs. He doesn't have the experience of having your period and all, you know, how that feels, what it is really like. He's a man. For him, there is no sameness in life and death, and then there's life again. And death is only a phase. That's something that we know. But men have a really hard time with this. So my mind was racing at the same time that I was, you know, getting into this. And the fabulous thing was that I could sort of so strongly connect with the emotion in his underbelly that the tension and the cold in his second chakra actually completely dissipated. And he's been bouncing around the house all day long. So that was quite awesome. And talking to you about this and, you know, rehashing all this, I'm actually rather proud of both of us, you know, and this is how we do, you know, this is what we do. So yeah, but I'm, you know, this is what I feel like after all that. I was kind of also in a state of shock, because when you've lived with someone for that long and they've been a certain way, then of course this is a big change, and it's huge, and I'm used to his being slightly more reserved and a bit more distant, which leaves a lot of room for me to do my own things in the way that I want them, and basically we just have always moved around each other and given each other a lot of free space and a lot of you could have more tea here. That's how we used to do things. And now, so there's more contact. We're having more contact also on the underbelly level, which is great. And I'm also fascinated by just the sheer completion process type of an experience that this has been, where I kind of was able to make available my experience on this underbelly level for him. So I had to, of course, afterwards explain a few things, but he didn't. He just feels so much better, and he feels much more alive, and he doesn't have to carry this weight around with him anymore. And the sadness over the lost brother is in here now. It's like that's a fact of life. That's one fact of his life. But he's not. I suppose what's a part of this type of problem with his mum and him, he was there at the time that all this was going on in her womb, right? He was right there. So he was the kid that was being held on to. And my mother-in-law, I've known her, she's gone now, but I used to know her, and she was somebody who had a hard time dealing with strong emotions, especially physical things. So she was actually rather a blamer. So she would have had resentment even to the child that was in her own womb, that was still alive. And I have heard, that's not my experience, but I've heard women, say things like they didn't want the child, or they feel burdened, in many ways. Very understandable, because your body's being taken over by this little hijacker, of course, for a while, and you have to make do with a lot of changes to your life and your body and all that. So very understandable. But knowing my mother-in-law's personality and the way she went about things, I wouldn't be surprised if there was actually like a transfer, like an involuntary transmission of the problem from her body to the next closest person, who was the other baby, right? The other little twin, my husband. So I hope this makes any kind of sense to anybody out there. God, you guys. I had to just, work our way through this. After that, when we had done the things, we went and watched a movie on the telly, Toy Story 4. Also great fun for the second time, because we'd, ordered the movie 2 days ago, so we could watch it the second time. It was a good thing that we didn't get to watch Frozen 2 a second time, because too much, too many big things. All that was completely fine. But one stray remark by my husband about a book he was reading late in the evening yesterday night broke my dam of self-control. And that's basically why I sit here looking like a wet doll. I think that's what I look. I feel like I look like a very old woman with all my troubles and my things. Everything was fine. It turns out that I have to deal with my own vulnerability as well, where now my husband actually wants to comfort me. He's there for me. And I have had so many thoughts of not being able to accept comfort, not being able to allow myself to need anything, because that's my programming. That's where I come from. Where I come from, there was no room for me ever needing anything beyond what was given. And you just managed to, I don't know, stay out of it. Stay out of the areas that were vulnerable. I stayed outside of the pain. I had no way of dealing ever with solitude, sadness, loneliness, helplessness as a kid. When I was 6, 7, 8 years old. You had to manage for yourself somehow. So admitting to the vulnerability nowadays drives me crazy. It makes me crazy in a way that I am really, afterwards I realized, which is also why I'm sitting here talking to you, managing to do this finally after all, because I was just in floods for part of the night and a part of the morning as well. I realized at one point that I was driving myself crazy again and again, disapproving of my own reactions. Okay, so this is the third part of this episode here. I actually managed to do 2 15-minute sessions, kind of a thing. So I don't know how much longer I will be on now, but it's a big deal. I was blaming myself, and I realized all of a sudden that it wasn't like I have a problem, okay, and I am behaving badly, and there is my reactions to that, and then I have to I have to try and tell myself not to react this way, not to hate myself for being vulnerable. I have to, like a separate set of things. Here's my vulnerability, and over here is the anger and wanting control and wanting the power back and all that. I realized that it's one thing. This is all this emotional stuff comes from the same. It's the same thing. It's one and the same field. This is what it feels like for me when I get so vulnerable. There's this whole field that's kind of come up. It's the truth about me. And I can sit here and say I don't agree with it, or blame myself for it, and be scared to death of how dangerous it feels to me to be so vulnerable, because there's all this pain. There's painful memories. I suppose there's a lot more painful memories than I really realize at this point. I'm not going to stand in my own way anymore. By keeping up my patterns of behavior, of blaming myself, getting at myself, hurting myself. There is no agency in that. There is no agency. It's only part of the same layer of, it's repetitive, endless repeating in my brain, in desperation, clawing at, any kind of thing that will give me a sense of agency again, or a sense of freedom, or a sense of being available to myself and being strong enough. I have had to be strong regardless, always, with people who had the craziest, and the whole shit circus with my dad was more of the same of this. So I had to go through that in order to end up here in this position at this point where I say finally, it has been a problem. I don't see it as a problem anymore. Maybe that's my conclusion. I do not see my being vulnerable as a problem anymore. Now, I choose to see it as it makes complete sense. Everything, knowing my personality, knowing that I'm kind of a, I'm a fiery temperament. I'm very emotional in many ways. So what would you expect? It's perfectly normal where I come from that this is what you get. And of course I hate feeling this way. Of course. So I'm supporting myself. Okay? I am giving this why I'm doing this type of thing again and sharing this because it makes me feel better. And I know there's quite a number of you guys out there, bless your souls, that have actually said a number of times already that it does you good to hear somebody else say it, that you have to have your own back by, instead of continuing self-flagellating and crucifying yourself on this thing inside the thing, you have to kind of see that all the flagellating and all the rage, it's part of the field. It's part of the experience that you had. It makes perfect sense for me to be like this. Wow. So yeah, so okay. That's how we grow up, isn't it? You finally grow up. You finally find a way to be to not bother so much about the dangers and the risks. It used to be for many people, I'm assuming, I know for many people that it is about other people's opinions. That's what people talk about, right? How it is their opinions. They're afraid of people's opinions. They're afraid of what people will think or what they will say behind your back and things like that. It's part of the same type of circus. Same circus. So, with all that, there were animation movies, which was fabulous and grand. I loved Frozen 2 in the cinema. It was awesome. It was beautiful. I really recommend you go see it if you're into that kind of thing. Don't hesitate any longer. We saw it in 3D, of course, but I wouldn't mind seeing it on the telly. I will in the future. This is a movie that we will be coming back to. Just so beautiful and so well done, and such beautiful colors and a great message. And I'm not spoiling it for you. You just have to go and see for yourself. Thank you so much for watching. It's 12:15, Wednesday, the 23rd of December. So we've had the solstice. Some solstice we've had, don't you think? I don't know. It's been interesting. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for watching. And as I said, I will do the Shakti Pads a bit at a time. I will also talk a bit more in the future about how this is all going. And I think that I'm trying, at some point I will have to get back to a bit more stability, Maybe that can come now that I've gone through this process myself. So thanks again and see you next time. Okay? Bye-bye for now.